The accusation. The crystal spires of Nexoria's capital gleamed like frozen lightning against the lavender sky. Riven Caldwell adjusted his environmental suit's settings as he strode through the grand diplomatic hall, still not fully accustomed to the higher oxygen levels that gave the Nexorian atmosphere its distinctive purple hue. "Ambassador Caldwell, your presence is requested in the High Chamber immediately," buzzed his translator, converting the melodic tones of the Nexorian attendant who had appeared at his side. Riven nodded, his heart sinking. The peace talks had been deteriorating for weeks. Emperor Vexthal's demands grew more unreasonable with each passing day. Territorial concessions that would displace millions of humans from colony worlds they had inhabited for generations. The High Chamber doors parted, revealing the assembled Nexorian Council. Their tall, slender forms were adorned with crystalline growths that signified their rank and lineage. At the center sat Emperor Vexthal, his purple skin bearing the most elaborate crystal formations, a biological crown that pulsed with internal light. "Human." The Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber. "Our primary power core was sabotaged during the night cycle. The energy signature of the disruptor device is unmistakably human in origin." Riven's mind raced. Without the power core, the Nexorian warfleet would be grounded for weeks. Precious time for the human colonies to strengthen their defenses. "This act of aggression cannot go unpunished," continued Vexthal. "Security recordings show an individual entering the court chamber. The identification is unclear, but the height and movement patterns match human physiology." From the shadows behind the Emperor's throne, Princess Ilara Zinthal stepped forward. Unlike her father, her crystal formations were delicate, like frost on a window. Her violet eyes met Riven's briefly, then darted away. "The punishment for sabotage against the royal fleet is death by stellar exposure. An investigation will commence immediately." Later that night, as Riven paced his quarters, a shimmer in the air announced an unexpected visitor. Princess Ilara materialized as her cloaking shield disengaged. "Ambassador, I must speak with you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It was I who sabotaged the core." "You?" Riven stared in disbelief. "Why would you betray your own people?" Tears like liquid amethyst gathered in her eyes. "My father plans to eradicate the human settlements on Proxima Centauri. Not just military targets, entire civilian populations. I accessed his private war council recordings." She extended her hand, a crystal data node in her palm. "The evidence is here. I had to prevent this genocide." Riven reviewed the recordings, horror growing as he witnessed the Emperor's plans for biological weapons designed specifically to target human DNA. "If they discover it was you," Riven began. "I will be executed regardless of my royal blood," Ilara finished. "Royal saboteurs face even harsher punishment, public disintegration to set an example." Riven contemplated the diplomatic fallout. If the princess was executed, any hope for peace would die with her. If the humans were blamed without evidence, war would be inevitable. "The investigation team will search your quarters at dawn," Ilara warned. "They will plant evidence if necessary. My father wants human blood." As she prepared to leave, Riven made his decision. "Princess, wait. I think I have a solution that might save both our peoples, but it will require a sacrifice." Ilara turned, confused in her violet eyes, as Riven explained his desperate plan.
The sacrifice. The Nexorian tribunal chamber buzzed with tension as Riven stood before the council, his wrists bound with energy shackles that glowed azure against his skin. The evidence against him had been presented: modified human technology found in his quarters, security recordings showing a figure of his build near the power core chamber, and residual energy signatures on his personal devices. "Ambassador Riven Caldwell," Emperor Vexthal's voice echoed through the vast hall. "You stand accused of sabotage against the Imperial fleet, an act of war against the Nexorian Empire. How do you respond to these charges?" Riven's gaze swept across the chamber, noting the dozens of Nexorian nobles whose crystal formations pulsed with anticipation. In the front row, Princess Ilara sat rigid, her violet eyes wide with guilt and fear. Beside her, her younger sister, Nysa Zinthal, watched with clinical detachment, her scholar's crystals glinting as she studied the human with undisguised curiosity. "I accept full responsibility for the sabotage," Riven declared, his voice steady despite the gasps that rippled through the assembly. Emperor Vexthal's crystal crown flared with savage satisfaction. "You admit to this treachery against our people?" "I do." Riven met the Emperor's gaze unflinchingly. "But I acted alone, without the knowledge or sanction of Earth's government or military. This was my decision, based on information I discovered about biological weapons being developed for use against human colonies." The chamber erupted in outrage. The Emperor rose, his voice thundering above the chaos. "Lies to justify your cowardly attack! You will face stellar exposure at dawn tomorrow. Guards, remove this human filth!" As the guards moved forward, a clear voice cut through the uproar. "Father, I invoke the right of verification." All eyes turned to Princess Nysa, who had risen from her seat. Unlike her elder sister's emotional demeanor, Nysa's expression remained calm, analytical. "What nonsense is this, daughter?" the Emperor demanded. "Ancient law permits a royal blood to request truth verification before execution of a foreign dignitary. As second heir, I exercise this right." The Emperor could not refuse without violating sacred tradition. Reluctantly, he nodded to the High Priestess, who approached Riven with a crystalline device that hummed with energy. "This will extract truth. It is painful, but thorough." As the device connected to Riven's temples, he steeled himself for the invasive mental probe. The chamber fell silent as images from his mind projected onto the central crystal array. The council watched as Riven discovered the Emperor's genocidal plans, as Princess Ilara revealed her sabotage, as Riven made his decision to take the blame. The Emperor's fury was terrible to behold. "Seize the princess," he roared as the images faded. "She has committed treason against her bloodline." Guards moved toward Ilara, but Riven's voice rang out. "I claimed her crime as my own willingly. By Nexorian law, does this not invoke the ancient statute of soul binding?" The High Priestess froze, her crystal formations pulsing rapidly. "The human speaks of the law of sacrificial protection. If one willingly takes punishment meant for royal blood, they become soul-bound, protected, and revered as a living shield of the royal line." "Impossible!" the Emperor snarled. "This law was never meant for lesser species." "The ancient texts specify no such limitation," interjected Nysa, quickly accessing a data crystal. "The human is correct. By accepting Princess Ilara's crime as his own, he has invoked soul binding. He cannot be executed, but must now serve as soul-bound protector to the royal family." The Emperor's rage was palpable, but even he could not defy such fundamental law without risking his throne. "So be it," he spat. "The human lives, but as property of the royal house, never again to leave Nexoria." As the energy shackles fell from Riven's wrists, his eyes met Ilara's across the chamber. Her gratitude was evident, but so was the realization of what his sacrifice truly meant. He had saved her life and prevented war, but at the cost of his own freedom. Behind her, Nysa's calculating gaze studied the human with newfound interest. What had begun as scientific curiosity about an alien species was evolving into something far more complex.
Golden chains. The eastern tower of the imperial palace became Riven's gilded prison. His quarters were luxurious by human standards, crystal walls that adjusted their opacity according to his thoughts, gravity settings that could be modified for his comfort, and a nutrient synthesis unit programmed with Earth cuisine. But the transparent barrier at his balcony edge was a constant reminder that he was no longer free. 3 weeks into his new existence, Princess Ilara visited him for the 6th time. Her crystal formations had changed subtly, developing patterns that Riven now recognized as signs of emotional distress. "The council meeting was difficult today," she said, sinking gracefully onto a cushioned surface that conformed to her slender form.
Father continues to push for military action against the outer colonies, though without the biological weapons. Your sacrifice has saved millions, Riven. But not all, he replied, gazing out at the purple skyline of the capital. And your position grows more precarious each day. Ilara moved closer, the sweet scent of her pheromones making Riven's head swim slightly, despite his environmental filters. You have become my strength, she whispered, her delicate hand touching his cheek. Without you, I would have never found the courage to continue opposing Father's most extreme measures. Their eyes met, and Riven felt the dangerous pull of attraction. Ilara's violet skin glowed in the dying light of Nexoria's twin suns, her crystal formations catching the light like diamonds. She leaned forward, her lips, cooler than a human's but soft nonetheless, meeting his in a tentative kiss. The door chimed, interrupting the moment. Princess Nissa entered without waiting for a response, her arms full of data crystals that she unceremoniously dumped onto Riven's work surface. Sister, Ilara acknowledged, her tone slightly irritated. Your presence is required in the diplomatic hall, Nissa replied, not looking up from the crystals she was arranging. The Arcturian ambassador has arrived early. After Ilara departed with obvious reluctance, Nissa turned her full attention to Riven. Unlike her sister's emotional warmth, Nissa approached him with intellectual fascination. I've compiled historical accounts of previous soul bindings, she explained, activating the first crystal. Most occurred centuries ago, and none involved non-Nexorians. You've created a fascinating legal precedent. That wasn't my primary motivation, Riven remarked dryly. Of course not. You acted from emotional impulse, as humans typically do. Nissa's statement carried no judgment, merely observation. However, your impulse has led to intriguing developments. Father cannot harm you without violating sacred law, yet you retain knowledge of his plans. It's an elegant solution to an impossible situation. As they worked through the historical records, Riven found himself enjoying Nissa's company in a different way than Ilara's. Where the elder princess was passionate and sometimes impulsive, Nissa was methodical and insightful. Her questions about human culture were precise, her analysis of diplomatic strategies refreshingly clear-eyed. You don't resent me for disrupting your family, Riven asked as the second sun set. Nissa looked up, genuine surprise in her expression. Why would I? You've provided an unprecedented opportunity to study human ethical frameworks and decision-making processes. Besides, she added, her voice softening slightly, Ilara would have been executed. Whatever complications you've introduced, they're preferable to losing my sister. As weeks turned to months, Riven found himself caught between the increasingly frequent visits from both princesses. Ilara sought emotional connection, her guilt gradually transforming into genuine affection. Their moments together grew more intimate, her touch becoming bolder, exploring the fascinating differences between their species with increasing passion. Nissa, meanwhile, engaged his mind. Their discussions of interspecies politics evolved into philosophical debates and cultural exchanges that lasted deep into the night. Though she maintained her scientific demeanor, Riven noticed subtle changes. The way her crystal formations brightened when he entered a room, her increasing tendency to position herself closer to him during their discussions. The soul-binding ceremony must be completed within the lunar cycle, Nissa informed him one evening, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Tradition dictates you must formally bond with a member of the royal family. I assumed that would be Ilara since I took her punishment, Riven replied, studying Nissa's reaction carefully. Something flickered in her eyes, perhaps disappointment. The ancient texts are not specific. The bond could be established with any royal blood. Before Riven could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the palace. Imperial guards burst into the chamber, surrounding them with weapons drawn. What's happening? Riven demanded. The
The guard captain's crystal formations pulsed with grim purpose. By order of Emperor Vexthal, the human is to be confined to the isolation chamber. The soul binding has been challenged.
Hearts divided. The isolation chamber beneath the palace hummed with containment fields designed to neutralize any escape attempt. Riven paced the hexagonal space, his mind racing through possible scenarios. After 3 days without visitors or information, the chamber door finally slid open to reveal both princesses, accompanied by 4 stone-faced guards. "The council has been in continuous session," Alara explained hurriedly, her crystal formations pulsing with anxiety. "Father has invoked the right of ancestral review to challenge your soul binding. He claims an outworlder cannot truly be soulbound," Nissa added, her analytical tone belied by the faint tremor in her voice. "The High Priestess is reviewing the ancient texts for precedent." Riven studied both sisters carefully. Alara's passionate concern was evident in her expressive features, while Nissa's more controlled demeanor couldn't fully mask her worry. The contrast between them had never been more apparent or more appealing. "There's more," Alara continued, glancing nervously at the guards. "Lord Krevmal, Father's military advisor, has formed a coalition calling for your immediate execution, regardless of the soul binding. They claim your continued presence threatens the purity of Nexorian bloodlines." "Specifically," Nissa interjected, lowering her voice, "they've noticed our interactions with you." I understood the implication immediately. They fear interspecies relationships. "The royal bloodline has remained unchanged for 10,000 years, Alara whispered. "The possibility of it being influenced by human genetics has created panic among the traditionalists." One of the guards stepped forward. "Your allotted time ends now, Highnesses." As they turned to leave, Alara impulsively reached out, her fingers brushing against Riven's in a gesture too quick for the guards to prevent. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through him, a deliberate transfer of energy that carried her emotions, the Nexorian form of a kiss. Not to be outdone, Nissa paused at the doorway. "I've left something for you in the environmental settings," she murmured before the doors sealed behind them. Later that night, Riven discovered Nissa's gift. She had reprogrammed his chamber's atmospheric controls to display stellar coordinates in a pattern only a human diplomat would recognize, the location of a hidden emergency transmitter capable of reaching Earth. Days passed in isolation until, unexpectedly, Emperor Vexthal himself appeared at Riven's chamber. The Emperor's crystal crown pulsed with barely contained fury. "Human, you have created a situation I could not have foreseen. The High Priestess has ruled that the soul binding is valid regardless of species." Riven maintained a diplomatic, neutral expression. "I'm pleased the ancient laws have been upheld, Your Majesty." "Do not test me," the Emperor hissed. "You may have found protection in our laws, but laws can be reinterpreted, particularly when both my daughters appear to be developing inappropriate attachments to you. I have shown nothing but respect for your culture and your daughters, Emperor. Yet Alara defends you with passion in council meetings, while Nissa spends hours researching precedents that might strengthen your position." The Emperor leaned closer. "I will not have my lineage contaminated by human influence. Make no mistake, if either of my daughters continues to show romantic interest in you, I will find a way to end this situation permanently." After the Emperor departed, Riven was moved back to his tower quarters, though now with additional guards. That evening, despite the increased security, Alara slipped into his room using her cloaking technology. "The soul-binding ceremony must proceed within 7 days, she said without preamble. "Father cannot prevent it without causing a religious crisis." She moved closer, the bioluminescent patterns on her purple skin intensifying with emotion. "Riven, it must be me you choose. We began this journey together, and my feelings for you have only grown stronger." Her hand caressed his face. "What we feel transcends species." Their lips met in a kiss that quickly deepened.
Alara's cool touch explored his body with increasing boldness, her crystal formations resonating against his skin in a sensation unlike anything Riven had experienced with a human partner. As clothing was discarded, their bodies entwined in a dance of discovery. Alien physiology created unexpected pleasures as they mapped each other's differences and similarities with increasing passion. Later, as Alara slept beside him, Riven stood at the window, conflicted. Her passion was intoxicating, her courage admirable. Yet his mind kept returning to Nissa, her brilliant insights, her subtle humor, the depth of understanding they shared. The next morning, Nissa arrived with new data crystals, ostensibly to continue their research. The moment the guard stepped outside, her composed facade faltered. "You were with my sister last night," she stated. It wasn't a question. "Nissa," she interrupted. "I don't require explanations," her voice tight. "Alara has always been driven by her heart. It's logical she would act on her feelings." "And you?" Riven asked quietly. "Are you driven only by logic?" Something shifted in her expression. "I've studied humans extensively since your arrival. Your adaptability, your emotional complexity, your capacity for self-sacrifice. These qualities are—" She paused, searching for words. "Fascinating. Just fascinating." Nissa stepped closer, her usual scientific detachment giving way to vulnerability. "When I'm with you, I experience irregular crystal formations that occur in no other context. My thought patterns become less efficient, but somehow more expansive." She hesitated. "I believe what I feel for you is not merely intellectual curiosity." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent palace-wide announcement. Lord Crevemal had staged a military coup, declaring the Emperor too weak to protect Nyxorian purity. The palace was under lockdown. "This is about you," Nissa said, her eyes wide. "Crevemal will use this chaos to eliminate you without consequences." As if confirming her words, an explosion rocked the tower and armed soldiers burst through the door. Riven shoved Nissa behind him protectively as the first energy weapon discharged.
Stellar Union. The energy blast struck Riven's shoulder, sending him crashing into Nissa. As they fell, she activated a hidden panel in the floor, and they dropped into a narrow maintenance passage beneath the chamber. "Emergency escape route," she explained, supporting his injured form. "All royal quarters have them." They navigated the dim passage until they reached a junction where Alara waited, her expression shifting from relief to concern when she saw Riven's wound. "Crevemal has taken the throne room," she reported. "Father is under house arrest, and the military has split, half supporting the coup, half remaining loyal." "We need to reach the communication hub," Riven grimaced through the pain. "If I can contact Earth's fleet, we might prevent this from escalating into interplanetary war." The sisters exchanged a look loaded with unspoken tension before nodding in agreement. Their journey through the palace's hidden pathways was treacherous. Twice they narrowly avoided patrols of Crevemal's soldiers. Ilara's knowledge of security systems and Nissa's technical expertise proved invaluable as they disabled sensors and redirected surveillance. When they finally reached the communication hub, they found it heavily guarded. "There's no way past them without detection," Ilara whispered. Nissa studied the layout, then turned to Riven. "The soul-binding ceremony. It's not just symbolic. Once completed, it creates a quantum entanglement between the Nyxorian and their bound protector." "How does that help us now?" Ilara asked impatiently. "If we perform an emergency binding ritual, the resulting energy surge could temporarily disable the hub's security systems. But it would require both of us to bind with Riven simultaneously, something never attempted in our history." "A dual soul binding?" Ilara looked skeptical. "The energy output could be dangerous." "It's our only option," Riven pointed out. In a small maintenance alcove, the three formed a triangle, hands linked.
The princesses began the ancient chant, their crystal formations glowing with increasing intensity as the ritual progressed. Riven felt a strange warmth spreading through him, a connection forming that transcended physical sensation. As the ritual reached its crescendo, a pulse of energy radiated outward. The lights in the communication hub flickered and died, plunging the area into darkness. In the confusion, they slipped past the disoriented guards. Riven's fingers flew across the unfamiliar controls, adapting Earth protocols to Nexorian technology. "I'm broadcasting on all frequencies," he explained, warning both Earth's fleet and the Nexorian military about Krevmal's coup and his plans for genocide. "It won't be enough," Ilara said grimly. "Krevmal has supporters throughout the system. Even with Earth's help, civil war is inevitable." Nissa, who had been studying the control panel intently, suddenly straightened up. "Unless we offer an alternative that neither side has considered," she turned to them, her eyes bright with inspiration. The dual soul binding wasn't just a tactical tool, it's created something unprecedented. She activated the central display, showing a scan of all three of them. Where Riven's human physiology had once been distinct, there were now traces of Nexorian energy patterns throughout his system. More surprisingly, both princesses showed subtle alterations to their crystal formations, patterns that mimicked human neural pathways. "We've begun to transform each other at the cellular level," Nissa explained, her scientific precision giving way to wonder. "Not just symbolically bound, but biologically compatible." "A true union between species," Ilara breathed, understanding dawning. The communication system suddenly crackled to life with a response from Earth's fleet. They had received Riven's transmission and were sending diplomatic vessels to assist in resolving the coup. Meanwhile, loyalist Nexorian forces had begun moving against Krevmal's positions. As the three made their way to the throne room to confront the usurper, they encountered the High Priestess in a deserted corridor. "I sense the ancient prophecy has been fulfilled," she said, her ancient crystal formations pulsing with surprise. "The stellar union, when three hearts from distant worlds become one." "What prophecy?" Riven asked. "It was dismissed as myth, but our oldest texts speak of a time when Nexoria would be faced destruction, only to be saved by a bond that bridges the void between worlds." When they finally reached the throne room, they found Krevmal already subdued by loyalist forces. The Emperor, freed from house arrest, stared at the three of them with a mixture of confusion and reluctant respect. "The Council has been monitoring the changes in your physiologies since the binding ritual," he admitted. "What you've done is without precedent, yet it may be our salvation." In the days that followed, the unprecedented triple bond became the cornerstone of a new peace treaty. The biological compatibility demonstrated by Riven and the princesses offered hope for genuine integration between humans and Nexorians, rather than mere coexistence. The Emperor, pragmatic despite his prejudices, recognized the political value of this union. In a formal ceremony beneath the twin suns, Riven was officially acknowledged as soul-bound to both princesses, a diplomatic liaison with unique status in both human and Nexorian society. "This isn't how I imagined my diplomatic mission would end," Riven remarked, as the three stood on the palace balcony, watching ships from Earth dock at the Nexorian spaceport for the first official cultural exchange. Ilara's hand found his, her touch sending familiar electric pulses through their shared connection. "It's not an ending at all," she said softly. "The stellar union is just beginning." Nissa, standing at his other side, nodded in agreement.
Our physiological integration continues to develop in fascinating ways. In time, we may become something entirely new, neither fully human nor Nexorian. A bridge between worlds, Riven mused, feeling the unique resonance that now connected the three of them across biological and cultural divides. As Nexoria's purple sky darkened to reveal the stars, the boundaries between their separate hearts, like the boundaries between their worlds, continued to dissolve into something greater than any could have imagined alone.